Ever felt like you're working hard, earning money, maybe even, trying to save, but it just slips through your fingers? Like there's this constant leak somewhere. Maybe those tiny impulse buys at the corner store, or just looking at piles of unused stuff at home and thinking, why did I even buy that?
Oh, yeah, that feeling of money just evaporating. It's incredibly common. And often, like our sources today talk about, it's not really one big financial hit, but more like a buildup of small, almost invisible, everyday habits.
Exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive into some source material that makes this really surprising link between those seemingly minor daily things and your overall financial health.
Mhm.
We're pulling insights from excerpts of The Attraction of Financial Freedom by Kei Sugawara, who researches habits of successful folks. And we've also got reflections from tidy alchemist Zhao Yin, who shares a really personal journey about, well, clutter and spending.
Right. And our mission here really is to unpack that connection. How
Mhm.
things as simple as handling a receipt or, whether you just wander around discount stores aimlessly, how that connects to cultivating what the author calls a wealthy constitution. It's not just spreadsheets and budgets, is it? It's about your lifestyle, your mindset, how you interact with the world around you.
Okay, let's really dig into this then. Kei Sugawara, the author, he's a freelance writer, spent time observing successful people. What's his main takeaway about them?
Well, his central finding is quite striking, actually. He noticed that wealthy individuals often have this really strict, grounded, um, meticulous attitude.
Mhm.
And not just towards big investments, but towards everyday cash, physical items, even how they deal with people.
He has this interesting idea, almost like money has a spirit or energy, and it's drawn to people who operate with a certain high level of, well, spirit or integrity in their daily lives.
That's definitely a perspective he explores. But the core idea, I think, is that building wealth isn't just about chasing a higher salary or penny pinching on tiny discounts. It requires a more fundamental shift inside adjusting your lifestyle, tackling what he calls these emotional flaws, and developing more regulated living. He's pretty firm that sloppy habits in small areas can actually snowball into financial, maybe even life breakdown.
Which really clicks with what Zhao Yin talks about, right?
Yeah.
Her personal story, she realized dealing with her physical possessions, all that stuff, it forced her to face her spending
That's
habits.
such a powerful link. Waste isn't just buying the thing you don't need in the first place. It's also letting those unused things just sit there and degrade. Her view is that items should, if possible, move on alive, sell them, donate them, gift them. It sort of honors the item and the money you spent.
So let's look at some specific habits the sources flag as potentially problematic, starting with those sneaky impulse buys. First up, convenience stores.
Yes. The convenience store. The author describes them almost like little financial moth traps. They're deliberately designed to pull you in, make you feel comfortable, and yeah, encourage you to buy something. You readily just walk out empty-handed, do you?
It's so true. Pop in for milk, walk out with snacks and magazine. The source mentions an average spend something like 755 yen, maybe 200 TWD. Seems small, but wow, that adds up. And the author contrasts this 247 need for immediate stuff with places like Europe or the US, where that constant convenience isn't quite the same. Suggesting maybe needing everything right now chips away at a more, I don't know, refined or disciplined approach.
Yeah, that constant availability. It removes that pause, doesn't it? That moment to think, do I really need this? There's less need to plan ahead or just, do without for a bit. That can definitely erode patience and maybe financial discipline too.
And then there are the 100 yen stores or dollar stores, that kind of thing. The sources actually admire the business model, keeping prices so low, improving quality even. There's that wow factor, right? I can get this for just a buck.
But here's the catch they point out. It can make people value things less. The thinking becomes, oh, if it breaks, whatever, I'll just get another one. And that mindset encourages grabbing more than you planned. And what's really surprising, the average spend, around 730 yen, is almost the same as in convenience stores.
Wow, really? So you go in thinking you're being thrifty for one specific thing, and you walk out having spent just as much, but on a load of impulse buys you might not even use. The author even suggests a tactic. Don't take a basket, just carry what you can hold. Limits the damage, I guess.
Exactly. And this points to something deeper the sources suggest. This kind of aimless browsing, buying little non-essentials. It's not just about the money spent. It's often a symptom
A symptom of what?
of needing to relieve small, built-up stress. The more you find yourself doing that mindless mini-shopping, the more likely maybe you're carrying some underlying tension. And here's the crucial bit. When you're stressed, your grip on money management tends to loosen up.
Ah, that creates that hole in the wallet feeling. where money just seems to disappear.
Precisely. The author admits it himself. After moving house, he found piles of unused impulse buys, like physical proof of those stressed, unconscious purchases and the money that just flowed out because of them.
It's like the physical clutter is just a mirror reflecting the financial clutter.
Exactly right. Which connects straight into another area the sources explore. Hoarding habits. Keeping way too many ice packs or stacks of old department store bags.
Yeah, the ice pack example really stood out. The source links hoarding them to maybe buying pricey foods, but the author's point is more about the accumulation itself, isn't it?
Right. He sees hoarding these things, consumables or perfectly good bags, as a sign of being unable, or maybe just reluctant, to let things go, to throw them away. Sure, a few are useful, but collecting dozens, it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
His advice is pretty straightforward. Just keep maybe 10 ice packs, ditch the rest, don't overthink it trying to sell them, just clear the excess.
And he links this back to self-management again.
Yes. He argues that hoarding stuff you don't really need, or even impulse buying something huge like a massive fridge when you live alone and then feeling you have to fill it. It stems from a basic inability to manage yourself. He calls it a scattered or sloppy lifestyle.
And the sources draw a pretty stark line between this sort of sloppy path and ending up in serious financial difficulty.
They do. They highlight traits found among people who've actually gone through personal bankruptcy in Japan. And the statistic is sobering, something like 3 million people over 20 years.
Wow. So what were those common traits they found?
3 specific things are mentioned: having multiple life insurance policies, consistently ignoring those small off-hour ATM fees, and having cable TV.
Okay, those almost sound random. How do things like ATM fees or cable TV link up with something as serious as bankruptcy?
But this is where the key insight lies, I think. These habits reveal a real laxity, a carelessness in managing small, regular expenses. Multiple insurance policies you don't need. Maybe it's not reviewing them or just not being able to say no. Paying ATM fees when free options are right there. It shows a lack of attention to detail, prioritizing tiny convenience over saving small amounts that really add up. And the cable TV thing, paying monthly, even if you barely watch it, just because canceling feels like too much hassle.
The underlying attitude is kind of, it's just a little bit of money, it doesn't really matter.
Exactly. And the author uses his own past experience with insurance to drive this home, this idea of financial leakage. He paid a lot into medical and cancer insurance for years. But then when he actually had multiple fractures, needed surgery, hospitalization, the payout was tiny. After fees, it was only about 40,000 yen.
Wow. That's a huge gap between what he paid in and what he got out.
Right. It really showed him how crucial it is to actively review policies, understand what you're actually paying for versus the potential benefit. He was told, if you have decent emergency savings, some of these policies might be redundant. He ended up canceling most of them. It's a powerful example of how those unchecked automatic payments or ignored little fees can just bleed money away without you really noticing.
So those little leaks, the things we ignore, they could be red flags for bigger potential problems later on.
Absolutely. And another really significant indicator the sources talk about is, well, the state of your own living space. They actually present findings linking lower income levels to messier rooms.
Really? What kind of characteristics did they find were common in the rooms of people who were, let's say, less well off?
They list 5 main things. Piles of unused or unsuitable stuff just lying around. Dirty water areas like toilets, sinks, kitchens, excessive amounts of hobby gear taking over the space. Hoarded trash, like maybe missing collection days, and old, broken electronics just sitting there. Picture fridges packed with old food or mountains of laundry piling up.
Paints the picture of chaos, really.
It does. And the author shares his own story here, a personal transformation that was actually triggered by this. He had this massive task of cleaning out his late mother's house, which was severely hoarded. Then when he moved himself later, he made a really drastic decision to seriously reduce his own possessions.
And how did that actually impact his finances?
He found it fundamentally changed his spending, dramatically cutting back even simple things like limiting his dishes so they had to fit in one drawer. It just stopped him buying unnecessary stuff. He didn't have space, and he didn't want the clutter back. He also mentions the relief of letting go of things, like old souvenirs, by donating them to a church sale, letting them leave alive, not just become waste. He draws a direct line. Keep your room clean and organized, and you stop wasting money.
That's a profound insight, isn't it? Your physical space isn't just cluttered, it's like a mirror reflecting your internal state, your spending habits. Tidy the room, and you're practicing the discipline needed for money management.
Precisely. It's like creating this positive feedback loop. Order in one area reinforces order in another.
Okay, let's look at how this laxity in daily management shows up in even simpler things, like the classic plastic umbrella collection.
Oh, it's almost a cliche, isn't it? Sudden downpour, pop into the store, buy a cheap umbrella, use it once, bring it home, stick it in the stand, repeat.
Yes.
And you end up with like 6 cheap umbrellas you don't really care about.
When the alternative is just carrying a small folding umbrella.
Exactly. The source tells a little story about a writer who bought one, used it to get to a cafe, and then just left it there. Figured someone else could use it, rather than taking it home to add to his pile. It's a small thing, but it shows decisiveness, a lack of attachment to excess stuff. The source argues that hoarding unnecessary items like this actually shows inner poverty.
Inner poverty. That's a really striking phrase.
Yeah, it speaks to a mindset maybe of scarcity, or just clinging on to things, even things that physically clutter up your life. It's a symptom maybe of an internal lack of order or discipline.
So applying that discipline even to the smallest things really matters, like organizing your bag.
Right. Successful people, the sources observe, are often really meticulous about their belongings, their time. There's this very specific example. The author's friend M, a doctor and writer. Between meetings, he would completely empty out his bag and reorganize it.
Empty the whole bag every time. That sounds like it would take ages. Why bother?
Well, M explained it was his way to mentally reset for the next task. By physically clearing the bag, putting in only what he needed for the next meeting, he was focusing his mind too. It stopped him forgetting things or carrying mental clutter from the last meeting. The author tried it himself and found it really cut down on errors, helped him switch gears between projects. It's a practical tip, maybe something listeners could try.
That's fascinating. Physical order in your bag, creating mental order for your day, impacting efficiency, management skills.
Exactly. It just shows how managing your physical world, even in small ways, is kind of practice for managing your internal world, your financial world.
And speaking of managing your internal world, your attention, the sources also point fingers at time thieves, like TV and messaging apps.
Oh yeah, the TV habit. Turning it on the second you walk in the door, maybe especially if you live alone, just for background noise. Classic example. The source highlights how easily hours just vanish. Time you could have spent on other things, work, chores, even just calling a friend.
So what was the author's fix for that?
He just stopped watching live TV, started recording shows, watched them later. That way he could fast forward ads, skip bits he wasn't interested in. It's about taking back control of your time, not letting the TV schedule run your evening.
And messaging apps, like Line mentioned in the source, they seem like an even bigger time sink for a lot of us today.
Absolutely. The source talks about what feels like an addiction, right? Constantly checking messages, feeling anxious, waiting for replies, how it just shatters your focus during work or anything else important. They even list traits of people who might be prone to it. Finding it hard to control desires, needing attention, getting fixated, struggling to say no, maybe having trouble accepting reality sometimes.
That really sounds like a description of poor self-management, doesn't it?
It is. And the sources argue that this lack of self-management, this inability to control where your attention goes, it's fundamentally linked to a lack of control over spending habits and potential money wastage. If you can't manage your focus, chances are you struggle to manage where your money's going too.
So that lack of discipline with attention can spill over into a lack of discipline with finances. Okay, let's shift gears a bit from these specific habits to the broader mindset towards money, towards other people. The sources talk about etiquette and grace.
Yeah, the observation is that successful people often seem to carry themselves with a certain grace. They follow etiquette, even in casual settings. The source uses golf or driving as examples.
And how does that relate to wealth exactly?
Well, it's contrasted with people who might, bend the rules or ignore etiquette, especially if they think no one's watching. The suggestion isn't that good manners makes you rich, but maybe that cultivating wealth involves adopting a certain graceful attitude. Not being fake, but having that internal discipline, showing respect for rules, for others, maybe for yourself. The source points out you can actually learn this just by observing people in upscale places it costs nothing to watch.
It's about carrying yourself with care and respect.
Which leads right into taking money seriously. The sources really emphasize that successful people are incredibly meticulous about money matters, right down to the small print.
Like actually reading contracts properly.
Exactly. The source mentions successful folks in publishing who really pore over their contracts. They see the payment terms not just as numbers, but as a reflection and evaluation of their work and their expertise.
And this applies to our personal finances too.
Yes, extending that same detailed review to your own bills, credit cards, utilities, even your salary slip. The source points out how many of us are kind of fuzzy on the gap between gross and net pay, where all those deductions actually go. Understanding taxes, fees, it gives you an awareness of society's money, how it works, and makes you more conscious of your own earnings.
It's about really seeing where your money goes, both coming in and going out.
Exactly. And this leads to another point the sources challenge quite strongly. This common idea that talking about money is somehow tacky or low class.
Yeah, you definitely hear that sometimes.
The source argues firmly against that. It positions money as a key indicator of how society values your work. It notes how hard many people find it, including creative freelancers like the author, to have open talks about pay, the rise of agents for creative types, partly seen as a way around that cultural awkwardness of discussing money directly.
Where does that discomfort even come from?
Well, the source speculates it might start with parents avoiding the topic with kids, accidentally teaching them it's secret or shameful. The argument is for talking about money more openly, especially in families, maybe involving kids in understanding household bills or using something relatable like, say, the cost of looking after a pet as an example.
Right, normalizing it makes it less of a taboo.
Yes. And following from that, the source questions why we sometimes look down on people who openly say they want to make money. It argues, look, earning money well takes skill. It's a form of social validation for your abilities. It points to successful business leaders, top athletes as examples.
So wanting financial success isn't something to be embarrassed about.
The source suggests if you want to achieve it, you need to respect the process, respect those who do it well. It links to drive, competence.
And successful people don't fall into that trap of saying, oh, money isn't a big deal.
Not at all. The source claims truly successful people are often actually quite greedy, but for opportunity. And they aren't afraid to ask for what their work is worth. It mentions Masayoshi Son's early negotiations as an example. The thinking is, if you act like money is secondary or unimportant, it can actually make you seem less serious, less trustworthy in your work. The source is pretty blunt. Money is part of work.
That really reframes the whole relationship with earning, doesn't it?
It does. And tied into this mindset, the source's contrast complaining about a low salary, which is common, but ultimately keeps you stuck with cultivating gratitude for what you do have. A negative complaining attitude. It hinders progress. A positive, grateful one. It fuels it.
Like trying to run a car on dirty fuel versus clean fuel. Makes sense.
Exactly. And finally, on mindset is dealing with envy. That common human thing of looking at others feeling like the neighbor's grass is greener.
Right. And does the source suggest where that comes from?
Often it suggests it stems from not fully accepting yourself or your current situation. By constantly comparing, constantly negating what you have or who you are, you're kind of pushing away your own potential success. The advice is to try and reframe that envy. Instead of letting it turn into self-criticism, use it as fuel. Okay, they did that. I'll work hard to achieve something similar, or maybe even better.
Turn that negative energy into a positive drive. Okay.
So let's maybe shift now to how the sources talk about the philosophy of spending money, using it once you have it. They talk about, well, smart spending.
How do successful people handle something basic, like, say, splitting a restaurant bill?
The source describes their approach as, well, wise, lacking pettiness. They tend to sort it out quickly, no fuss.
Yeah.
Sometimes just suggest a round number to avoid awkwardness over pennies. There's also a grace in accepting being treated or offering to treat others, knowing it's part of the flow, the give and take.
It's about the relationship, not counting every cent in that moment.
Yes. And the sources also go beyond just save, save, save. While they acknowledge the strong saving culture, especially in Japan, they cite savings figures. They emphasize that just having savings doesn't automatically mean you feel rich.
So what's missing?
Money needs to flow, they argue. It needs vitality. Just hoarding it, like the example of elderly people passing away with huge savings they never touched, is seen as kind of a waste of that resource. Money's compared to social blood. It needs to circulate in the economy, in your life, to be active and useful.
So saving needs a purpose.
Absolutely. Saving should be for something clear, something motivating, buying a specific thing, funding a trip, an investment. That turns it into active money. The sources really stress that accumulating experiences, memories, through spending is often way more valuable long-term than just watching a bank balance tick up. The author found his own spending on experiences actually expanded his network and opportunities, attracting wealth later,
It's investing in your life story, not just your accounts.
which connects to spending decisively. The sources describe successful people buying what they really want, often without much hesitation, because they're clear on their values, their priorities.
As opposed to what you might call that poor people mentality, buying something just because it's cheap or on sale.
Exactly. Spending should be driven by your needs, your values, what genuinely improves your life, not just the lowest price tag. The sources even bring up this kind of counterintuitive idea, positive regret.
Positive regret, that sounds
Yeah.
contradictory.
The idea is, if a successful person makes an impulse buy the regret, they later regret, they don't just beat themselves up about it. They try to frame it positively, like, okay, lesson learned there, or that opened my eyes to something. They might even turn it into motivation, right? I need to work harder, so affording things like this isn't even a question. The worst thing is just dwelling on the negative feeling. Money spent, even badly, should become positive active money by extracting a lesson or drive from it.
There's a great line from the source capturing that. Making money needs no refinement. Using money needs refinement.
It's all about the wisdom and intention behind how you use your money. Oh, and the sources also briefly mentioned debit cards as a practical tool for building better spending habits.
Right. How can using a debit card actually help?
Well, unlike a credit card, it takes the money straight out of your account, right then and there. So you get immediate feedback on what you've spent and what's left. It stops you overspending, gives you a clearer picture of your cash flow. It can help build that discipline before maybe using credit more strategically. Plus, often no annual fees, maybe some rewards. It's a straightforward way to manage day-to-day spending more consciously.
That immediate feedback loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like it would really reinforce awareness.
Absolutely. Another key spending area for successful folks, investing in themselves.
What kind of things are we talking about?
Things that boost their skills, knowledge, well-being. The source lists studying, hiring language tutors, personal trainers, even using high-end services like, say, professional salons or stylists.
Right. There's that quote, investment in self is never betrayed.
It's powerful. And the sources give a pretty striking example. The soccer player Kisuke Honda apparently paid a lot to fly his stylist internationally twice a month while he was playing in Italy. Now, that's extreme, obviously, but it shows the level of investment some people make in their personal brand, their image, things they see as crucial for their success.
It's seeing personal development not just as a luxury, but as a fundamental investment.
Exactly. Experiences, learning, growth, seen as priceless. They yield returns that might not be immediate cash, but can hugely expand opportunities down the line, as the author found himself.
And finally, the sources highlight what they argue is maybe the most valuable use of money, spending it with love or for others.
Right. The most fulfilling way to use money, it suggested, is when it's spent on others with genuine care. Think of a kid buying a small gift for their mom with pocket money, or a couple getting meaningful anniversary gifts. The joy, the connection that goes way beyond the price tag.
And there's a sort of belief this attracts good luck or wealth.
The source touches on that idea, linking it to maybe self-help concepts, but grounds it in observing that this kind of generous spirit often seems connected to positive outcomes. Charity is presented as an ultimate expression for the very wealthy Bill Gates, is the example, directing his fortune to global aid while being personally quite frugal.
So it's not about being flashy, but being intentional about using wealth for good.
Yes, and the sources encourage smaller acts too, dropping change in a donation box, supporting causes you care about. It's seen as circulating money with positive intent, which is believed to contribute to the overall flow, maybe eventually benefiting you too, contributing to true wealth in a wider sense.
Okay, let's bring this right back down to something very tangible the sources focus on. Money itself and the wallet. They notice wealthy people are often really particular about their wallet.
Yes, that's a recurring observation. Their wallets tend to be good quality, well looked after, handled with a bit of care, not just, crammed into a back pocket all battered. And the money inside is often neat too, not just stuffed in any old how.
So how does caring for a wallet link to caring for money?
Well, the sources suggest that valuing your wallet kind of reflects valuing the money inside it. Treating bills neatly, even though it doesn't change their monetary value, is a small act of respect. This attitude can influence how others see you, maybe, but more importantly, how you feel about money, about being in control. The author shares his own story. Getting a really nice, durable wallet actually made him more mindful, more deliberate about handling cash. It taught him a better attitude. The suggestion is almost like getting a nice wallet can be a catalyst, a physical commitment to changing habits.
Like investing and treating your finances with respect.
Exactly. And what you keep inside the wallet, just as important. The sources note successful people typically keep only money and essential cards in there.
So no bundles of old receipts, no loyalty cards for every coffee shop you've ever visited.
Pretty much no. That clutter receipts, tons of point cards, too many credit cards is kept out. Receipts get dealt with quickly, maybe moved to a specific pocket elsewhere, then processed later. They don't live in the wallet.
Which ties into that recommended daily habit, clearing out your wallet.
Right. Emptying it out each day when you get home. Take out receipts, sort them, keep what's needed, file or bin the rest, get rid of coins, any bits of fluff or dirt. Just a small, consistent act of tidiness and keeping track.
And cutting down the number of cards you carry is part of that discipline too.
Absolutely. All those point cards, multiple credit cards, they just create bulk and mental clutter. The advice is be selective. Keep point cards only for places you genuinely go often, where points actually add up meaningfully. And carry only essential credit cards, maybe 2 or 3. Fewer cards just makes things simpler, and it visually reflects better organization, better intention. The source warns about that trap of just signing up for store cards everywhere you go.
Be intentional about the access you give yourself to spending.
Precisely. And finally, arranging the bills neatly, sorting them by denomination, having them all face the same, maybe all face up or all face down, whatever your personal principle is.
That seems like such a tiny detail, doesn't it?
It is, but it's presented as just another small, deliberate act. Tidiness, respect for the money. Well, the direction doesn't magically change anything, having a system and sticking to it. It reflects that underlying meticulousness, that discipline the source is linked to financial well-being. It's about control, even in the little things.
So pulling all of this together then, from the state of your room, your wallet, to your habits around impulse buys, managing tiny expenses, how you view and talk about money, how you choose to spend it.
It really paints a whole picture, doesn't it? Attracting wealth, according to these sources, it's not just about the paycheck size or knowing fancy financial terms. It seems deeply connected to your everyday habits, your ability to manage yourself, your basic mindset towards money, possessions, other people, and your willingness to invest wisely in yourself, in experiences. It's about cultivating this inner discipline, this deep-seated respect for yourself, your things, others, and yeah, for money itself is this vital force.
And the really powerful thing here, I think, is that you don't need to be earning a fortune to start building this wealthy constitution. These changes start small with things you can actually do today, clearing out your wallet tonight, thinking twice before you walk into that discount store, consciously looking at a utility bill instead of just letting it auto pay.
Exactly. It's about starting where you are right now and building those disciplined habits, one small step after another.
So maybe something to think about as you go about your day. If the state of your wallet, or maybe the order of your room, tells a story about your financial habits, what story is yours telling right now? And what single small change could you maybe make today to start writing a different story, one that reflects the kind of financial future you truly want to attract?